In the long history of the Big Ten Conference, there have only been 6 men who have been commissioner. We are about to have a 7th. Tony Petitti is set to be introduced as the 7th commissioner in the history of the Big Ten Conference, a position that was first filled by Major John L. Griffith back in 1922. Tony Petitti is 62 years old and has had an incredible career so far, an awful lot of it in the world of television. Of course, he was at ABC Sports from the late 80s to the late 90s. He was at CBS Sports from 1997 to 2008 as an executive VP, spent time as the CEO and president of the MLB Network, and is about to be introduced to everybody at the Big Ten Conference headquarters. Let's listen in out nearby Chicago.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and I am Robert Jones, the Chancellor of the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and I have the distinct pleasure of serving as the Chair of the Big Ten Council of Presidents and Chancellors. I would like to thank you all for being here with us today at the Big Ten Conference Center. You know, as we get started, I'd like to take just a moment of personal privilege and to congratulate Illini cornerback, Devin Witherspoon, for being selected in the first round of the 2023 NFL Draft by the Seattle Seahawks. And so we're very, very proud of Spoon, as we call him. I know I speak for the entire conference and the COPC when I say that we are certainly thrilled to officially welcome Tony Petitti to the conference as the next Big Ten Commissioner. And I am not going to shy away from saying unequivocally that the Big Ten Conference is the premier athletic conference in the country, and the Big Ten Commissioner is the most important, most visible, and the most sought-after leadership role in all of intercollegiate athletics. So we're under enormous pressure to really get it right the first time. So I just want to take a moment to thank my colleague Darryl Pines for his careful and his thoughtful leadership of this search that led us to Tony. He, alongside the search committee members and the Big Ten Conference staff, carried out a national and a diverse search with confidentiality and with deliberative thoughtfulness to ensure that we identified the very best person to lead this conference at this critical point in his history. I just cannot say enough about how much respect I have for the manner in which Darryl led us all through this process. It is clear that Tony is exactly the right person at the right time for the Big Ten Conference. And we were looking for a strong and collaborative individual who could really step into this role already on the run. And under Tony's leadership, we have a commissioner who will continue our enormous momentum and ensure that our next chapter of the Big Ten story will be every bit as innovative and every bit as visionary as everyone expects from a coalition of the greatest universities in the world. Tony clearly understands the business side of athletics. It is evident across his career. He has seen success at every level, spanning virtually every sport. And while the realities of modern collegiate athletics require someone who understands the business responsibility of the conference and who can manage one of the most complex athletic business operations in the country, it also demands a leader who can create transformative experiences for our student athletes. And for nearly 700,000 students enrolled across our universities, and for the millions of alumni and friends who maintain their connections with our institution through their love of athletics. What sets Tony apart in our search was his understanding of our overriding responsibility to make the success of our student athletes on and off the field the top priority. Tony knows that our highest standards of academic integrity with public accountability and transparency are Big Ten hallmarks that are every bit as recognizable as the conference's long history of championship victories. Tony isn't just a trusted leader in the business of athletics. He is a man who loves college athletics and understands the legacy of the Big Ten Conference. I look forward to watching that Big Ten legacy grow even more impressive under his tenure as our next commissioner. But before I turn it over to my colleague, President Pine, I would be remiss if I didn't take just a moment to also acknowledge Kevin Warren for his dynamic leadership as a commissioner who really helped lay the strong academic and financial foundation for the Big Ten during the global pandemic conference, during global and conference realignment, and for his steady hand as we really start to rethink the entire amateur athletic model. So, Kevin, thank you for your leadership, your friendship, and for your support of Tony, and for the conference, and for being here with us today. So thank you all for joining us today on this really landmark day of the Big Ten Conference history. And now it is my great pleasure to ask Darryl Pines to join me here at the podium and offer some remarks as well. Darryl, again, thank you for your leadership and your commitment to the Big Ten.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chancellor Jones. It's a pleasure to work with you and my colleagues in the Big Ten. So my name is Darryl Pines, and I'm the president of the University of Maryland College Park, and it has been my honor to serve as the chair of the Big Ten Commissioner's Search with all of my colleagues. Before I get started, I too want to give a shout out to Deontay Banks, a cornerback from the University of Maryland who was selected yesterday. Just like the Illini, a Terrapin was selected for the New York Giants. You know, I just have to do that. Go Terps! Now I'm going to move on, back to the business at hand. So my institution, the University of Maryland College Park, officially joined the Big Ten about a decade ago in 2014. And I can tell you all from my own personal and professional experience that the Big Ten Conference is indeed the nation's leaders in academics and athletics. Because of the Big Ten Conference pioneering history as the oldest Division I conference in the United States, and because of its national footprint, we wanted to attract an extremely strong and diverse pool of candidates from every corner of this great nation of ours. To accomplish this goal, the search committee was comprised of members of the Executive Committee of the Council of Presidents and Chancellors, as well as members of an advisory committee of the Big Ten. Along with myself, the Executive Committee consisted of 4 presidents and chancellors, including Dr. Robert Jones, Chancellor of the University of Illinois, and Chair of the Council of Presidents and Chancellors, and Dr. Christina Johnson, President of The Ohio State University, and Ms. Joan Gable, President of the University of Minnesota. The Advisory Committee was represented by athletic directors, senior women administrators, faculty athletic representatives, and staff from the Big Ten Conference. I want to take this opportunity to thank my fellow colleagues on the Executive Committee and all of the members of the Advisory Committee for their work. Their collective input and consultation were essential in establishing the criteria for the type of individual that we were seeking to become the next commissioner of the Big Ten. I want to give them a round of applause. Thank you. Our search process started on Thursday morning at our monthly Council of Presidents and Chancellors meeting on January 12, 2023, when the Commissioner, Kevin Warren, expressed of his desire to accept the President's position and CEO job at the Chicago Bears. The Big Ten Council of Presidents and Chancellors, as you've already heard from Chancellor Jones, sincerely thanks Commissioner Warren for his outstanding service to the Big Ten. In fact, exemplary service to the Big Ten. We are very grateful, Commissioner Warren, for your work that you did over the last 3+ years, and we wish you Godspeed as president of the Chicago Bears. The Executive Search Committee then selected the search firm Turnkey ZRG, an outstanding team of professionals, truly outstanding, led by their CEO and chairman, Mr. Len Perna, to assist both the executive committee and the advisory committee on our process. I have to say this, the turnkey ZRG and Mr. Perner were truly exemplary. We couldn't have picked a better group. They did an outstanding job. Our process. First, we developed a comprehensive position description that reflected not only the requirements for the position, but allowed us to speak to the values and ideals of the Big Ten Conference. These core values include academic excellence, athletic championships, institutional collaboration, community engagement, and global reach. Next, we divided our commissioner search process into 4 phases. The first phase, phase 1, our discovery mode, listening to our community stakeholders, including all members of the COPC, athletic directors, head coaches, senior women administrators, faculty athletic representatives, and even our corporate partners and our not-for-profit partners. We were seeking their input on what were the key attributes that they wanted in the 7th commissioner of the Big Ten Conference. Phase 1 was followed by our recruitment phase to seek nominations. In our search process, we had over 100 applications and nominations for this position. They included people who were athletic directors, NCAA Division I commissioners, presidents and chancellors, media leaders, and also senior professional in the sports community. We then transitioned to phase 3, which involved vetting, evaluating, and due diligence of a group of about 30 high-quality candidates. This enabled us to down select to about 12 to 14 high-quality, high-value candidates who would advance to a series of Zoom interviews with our search committee. Lastly, we moved to the final phase of our process, which involved a series of in-person interviews with our candidates. All of the finalists were all extremely, extremely talented individuals. However, one individual stood out among the crowd, and that individual was Mr. Tony Petitti. A former deputy commissioner and chief operating officer of Major League Baseball, Mr. Petitti has had over 4 decades of executive experience throughout the media and sports industry. Our members of the Council of Presidents and Chancellors were excited about the depth and experience and breadth of knowledge that Mr. Petitti would bring to the job of Big Ten Commissioner. Moreover, in our interviews, he wowed us with his knowledge of the challenges facing our industry, intercollegiate athletics, and his track record for finding innovative solutions to complex challenges. He is known as a collaborator and a person who simply gets things done. If you've read his bio, you know that Mr. Petitti has played important roles in not only the Bowl Championship Series, but one of his most important life experiences is the simple fact that he himself was a student athlete, a baseball player at his alma mater, Haverford College in Pennsylvania. He has a personal and deep connection to the experience of student athletes and cares about their well-being and, of course, their future. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming and congratulating the 7th Commissioner of the Big Ten Conference, Mr. Tony Petitti.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Chancellor Jones and President Pines, for those welcoming and kind remarks. And thank you to the entire Council of Presidents and Chancellors for this opportunity. It's great to see a few of our athletic directors, Josh, Derek, Mike, the chair of our senior women administrators, Sarah, our partners, including Jordan and Francois from Fox, my old colleagues from CBS, Dan and Harold, Kevin Warren. Kevin, thank you so much for everything you've done this past few weeks, and I know we're going to continue to talk, so I really appreciate all your support. Thank you all for being here today. And welcome to those watching on the Big Ten Network and online. First, I'd like to congratulate, in keeping with the theme, all 9 Big Ten Conference student athletes for their selection in the first round of the 2023 NFL Draft. It's a remarkable achievement. It's an honor to stand before you here today as the 7th Commissioner of the Big Ten Conference. I understand that I begin my role as Commissioner at a time in college athletics marked by both incredible opportunity and historic change. I am fortunate to guide a conference that not only has remarkable traditions, but has the current strength, unity, and willingness to collaborate to effectively meet the challenges ahead. This past weekend, I attended the 41st Big Ten Women's Golf Championships at Fox Chapel Golf Club in Pittsburgh. I had the opportunity to meet student athletes, coaches, and staff. Although the weather provided some additional challenges, the quality of play was great. And Illinois, led by Crystal Wang's incredible performance on Sunday, won the Big Ten Championship. Congratulations, Josh. As I walked the course and watched the play up close, I thought a lot about the remarkable journey these student athletes must have undertaken to reach this championship. The dedication and sacrifice, the families, coaches, teachers, and friends that provided support all along the way. And that right now there are young people from everywhere in the United States and in countries around the world that are discovering the sports they love and beginning that same journey, one that might lead them to a Big Ten university as a student athlete, where they will compete on the biggest stages in college athletics, receive a world-class education, and become part of a lifelong community. Big life, big stage, Big Ten is a perfect description of that journey. The combination of athletics and academics is an important part of my own personal experience. While I was not a good enough baseball player to compete anywhere near the Big Ten, I was able to play for 4 years in Division III at Haverford College. And by the way, Haverford College has produced a lot of MLB executives, way more than professional players, and we're really proud of that. I know the power of great academics and athletics. That combination has opened every important door for me throughout my entire life. I loved every aspect of being a student athlete, except for my 0 for 20 start my freshman year. So while I may not have come to this role directly from another position in college athletics, I understand the responsibility that the Big Ten Commissioner and the conference staff have to help ensure that Big Ten members continue to provide the broad-based athletic offerings that have defined the conference, and that we continue our core mission to provide our 10,000 student athletes with the support and resources they need to succeed in the classroom, to graduate, and to win championships on the field and in the arena. The experiences I've had throughout my career have shown me that the best way to protect the core values of an organization are to embrace change, to innovate, and to build consensus. Obviously, college athletics has changed dramatically throughout the Big Ten's 127 years. I have firsthand experience with one of the most significant changes in college football history, the creation of the Bowl Championship Series, known as the BCS. In 1988, two friends and I decided to meet in Los Angeles to go to the Rose Bowl. I was not working in college sports yet, or sports at all, but I loved college football, and I'd always wanted to go to the game. It was a great game. Michigan State, led by Lorenzo White and Bobby McAllister, beat a Rodney Peete-led USC team with more than 100,000 fans in attendance. It was better than I'd imagined it would be. Just a few months after that game, I unexpectedly started working at ABC Sports. And the 1989 Rose Bowl was ABC's first time broadcasting the iconic game, and I found myself working with people like Keith Jackson. A few years later, as a young programming executive at ABC Sports, I led the team that worked closely with Commissioners Delaney, Kramer, and Hansen, and the Rose Bowl staff to change college football's postseason and put it on the path to today's college football playoff. Despite the great tradition of the Rose Bowl and all of the major bowls, college football needed a better postseason, one that included all of the conferences competing for a chance to win the national championship. The Big Ten, the Pac-10, and the Rose Bowl, despite all of that tradition, had the courage to change and to embrace the BCS. I think that same courage is necessary today. While I cannot predict today what change will look like, I know that the COPC expect the Big Ten Conference to lead, and that the unmatched combination of academic and athletic excellence will remain the absolute priority of the Big Ten Conference. As I close, I'd like to say thank you to the Big Ten community, the presidents and chancellors, the athletic directors, senior women administrators, faculty athletic reps, coaches, student athletes, the Big Ten Conference staff, most of whom are here today, and the great Big Ten fans. Thank you for making me feel so welcome these past 2 weeks. And thank you to the colleagues, mentors, and friends who have been with me on this road to the Big Ten. And I'd like to call out a couple of people if I could. First to Dennis Swanson, my first boss at ABC Sports. He gave me the opportunity to work there. There's no bigger Illini basketball fan than Dennis, that's for sure. And then also the group of commissioners that I first worked with when I started working in college athletics. Their passion inspired me to really love this space. Jim Delaney, Tom Hansen, Roy Kramer, Gene Corrigan, Mike Tranghese. I learned so much about this space from them, and they were an absolute inspiration. And lastly, I'd like to say thank you to my family, to my dad, who's been gone almost 20 years, a New York City policeman that passed on his love of sports to me. I miss our stickball games back in Queens, even though I don't remember ever beating him one time. To my mom, who fought hard to make sure that my two sisters, Anna and Susan, and I had a great education. She's been an incredibly positive force with everyone she touches, especially my two daughters. And to my girls, Allie and Danielle, who are in Los Angeles and London, I could not be any prouder of you both. And the best part is I get to share this next chapter with you both. So with that, thank you all for coming. I'll toss it back to Carrie and open it up for questions. Thank you.
There we go. Hey, I'd like to remind the media that's online right now that if you want to drop questions in the chat, Chris Masters from the Big Ten Conference will go ahead and read your name and your question out loud so we can make sure that we get it up for you. And with that, I'll go ahead and open it up for questions. Here you go. I'm going to hand you the mic, which is, oh, there you go. You go. Thank you.
Paul M. Banks, the Sports Bake. Welcome to the Big Ten.
Thank you.
You just brought up how you were a big part of the BCS and the development of that. So obviously you know a lot about the evolution of the sport, and where do you see it going in terms of playoff expansion?
Yeah, I was just fortunate enough to be at the CFP meetings this past couple of weeks, really just to listen in as they make this transition. And there's just a tremendous amount of excitement about the expansion and what it's going to mean for the sport. And I think the one thing about the BCS that was really great, and I think that'll continue with the expanded playoff, is just the ability to make the regular season still very important and build that excitement. So it's not like you want to think about it as two halves, postseason and regular season. It really is one connected half. And the goal of a great postseason is to make the regular season better. I feel really confident that the number that's been chosen will do exactly that.
Matt.
Thank you. Hi, Tony. Matt Brown from Extra Points and D1 Ticker. Because you're able to come into this role here outside of the traditional college athletics, infrastructure, I imagine you had a chance to look at what the Big Ten is really good at and maybe what some of the places it needs to improve. You can look at that with a new perspective that maybe somebody deep within can't really see. I'm wondering if during that process you came up with any particular opportunities for this conference that maybe might not be intuitive to some of the folks who are listening right now.
I think the first thing, I appreciate the question, I think with both Chancellor Jones and President Pines, that became obvious during the process was making sure that we understood the priorities going forward and that we're aligned to meet those priorities. And so I think that was the first step. I will say the process was really thorough and very substantive, as was alluded to. So that was very helpful because it gives me a head start to start working on the things that are important. So I think it's all of those things. One, obviously, as you come in as a new leader, you want to strike the right balance from understanding what the staff and the colleagues do and how you work with them. So I'll try to be deliberate. But at the same time, I think there's a mandate to innovate just because we have to protect what's really important here, which is the student-athlete experience. And the way to do that best is by making sure that we embrace the changes ahead and react to them. So I can't give you anything specific today because it's obviously pretty new. It is the focus. Thank you.
Nicole.
Nicole Auerbach, The Athletic and SiriusXM. Chancellor Jones talked about rethinking the entire amateur athletic model. What does that mean to you, and what does your background in professional baseball help with a collegiate model that is becoming increasingly professionalized?
Yeah, I think there's obviously a lot of different opinions about which direction it will go. I think number one, it's going to take great collaboration among all of the conferences in the NCAA to accomplish that. I don't think one conference, while we can lead, I think it's going to take everybody working together to come up with the right solution. When I think about that, I start with the core, which is I think what was really emphasized here today, which is that combination of opportunity through academics and athletics. That's what is at the core of what we're trying to do. I've read a lot. I know you're alluding to an employee model or other things. I'm not sure people understand what all of that means going forward. But I do think and recognize that just like the prior generations of student athletes, this generation will need different things. They'll need different levels of support. They might need different benefits. And I think that's already underway and happening. So you can embrace all of that change without having to really change the actual model. So I think that's the sweet spot of what we're trying to do is recognize what student athletes need going forward, but also preserving the core of what these institutions think their mission is.
Chris.
Chris Solari, Detroit Free Press. Tony, in your work, you've obviously worked with college administrators, broadcasters. I'm wondering, particularly with name, image, likeness, and some of the other things that are there, how do you navigate that constituency? Plus, obviously, this is something that came from the federal government that was required. How do you navigate that to change the landscape? And where do you feel it is right now within the NIL structure?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'll say is I think student athletes, it's clear they have the right to monetize their name, image, and likeness, and I think that's a good thing. And I think, but going forward, it's more about what's that system going to be. And I think there's a lot of words that come up in speaking with athletic directors and SWAs and the COPC about transparency. And I will say one thing, college athletics is one national ecosystem. The Big Ten competes across multiple states. We compete nationally for championships. I think that system deserves a national solution and a national system. And so that's why the collaboration is so important. That's why federal legislation is a lot about what you've been reading about over the last few months, because it's the best solution. State by state doesn't seem to make sense for a system that competes the way that we do.
We're going to go to a question online from Dennis Dodd at CBS Sports.
Thank you, Carrie. Commissioner, the perception in the Big Ten is at least that the hard stuff is done, that a new TV deal is already done. USC and UCLA are coming in next year. What specifically are the bullet point, the richest conference out there, maybe things that people haven't thought of yet?
Well, I'll start with the first two things you mentioned in terms of the media deal. Obviously, Kevin and team did a remarkable job. It's an incredible platform with the partners of Fox, CBS, and NBC going forward. But that's going to require great execution, so I don't think to say that work is done, I think, is unfair. There's a lot of work to do that to make sure our partners are successful, that the members of it and the student athletes are getting the benefit of those great media deals. So number one, there's that. And I think expansion also, I will say, it's really important to integrate USC and UCLA properly. So while they are going to be members, there's a ton of work that has to be done to make sure that we organize it properly, that student athletes, when they enter, the schedules make sense. All of those things are really important. So there's that. On the bigger picture and opportunity, obviously there's some of the issues that were asked before about NIL and legislative, but I just think right now there's some great opportunities in college sports. The college football playoff being one. It's going to expand and reimagine what the postseason is. I think what just happened this past March in the women's basketball tournament in Iowa was a huge part of that, and Caitlin Clark. So I think that's another huge opportunity, and I think when you see momentum someplace, I think as a leader, your responsibility is to really double down and focus on that, because there's a great opportunity in the women's basketball game right now to grow. And so I think of those, in terms of other bigger initiatives, I need more time on the ground to start thinking about things specifically, but so far I've been extremely impressed by the staff, how creative they are, how engaged they are, and I think they've got, under Kevin's leadership, there are a lot of ideas welling up, and we're going to get after them as fast as we can. Thank you, yeah, that's a good thing.
I'll let you get your drink of water.
Thank you.
Tony, Kyle with Sports Report Media. Kind of on your theme, embracing change in your speech. You came from an all-digital place. Obviously, the landscape of media is changing from traditional legacy media to a lot of digital. What are some of your thoughts moving forward on embracing more digital as we move further along?
Yeah, I think what I've always found is I learned this way back is that the content, the games are what matters, and the platform is secondary. So if you have something that's great, people will find it. So we're in the process of that change right now. And the legacy media companies are still a huge, important piece of what goes on. That's not changing, anytime soon. It's obviously there's things to sort of make it an evolution going on right now, but I do think that's still the core of what we're doing. Having said that, the key thing is to make sure that these great games, our student athletes, are on the platforms where young people want to be. And it's really clear. Young people want to share, and they want to collaborate, and they want to have a conversation. So we have to find the right sweet spot, working with our partners to make sure that conversation is happening around every sport that we play, every championship we have. And the last thing I'll say about it is that in this generation, student athletes have a powerful voice. I was really struck. Caitlin Clark posted something about who she thought was going to win the Masters, and you're talking about millions of impressions. So that's changing very rapidly, and fans, they want to hear directly from athletes, whether it's student athletes, professionals. So that's a big part of the next generation, and it's really incumbent upon all of us that we allow, younger people especially to engage where they want to and not be so rigid. Thank you.
Adam.
Adam Rittenberg with ESPN. Welcome, Tony. As far as you mentioned the effort into UCLA and USC, but as you look at the realignment landscape, which is always kind of changing and evolving, where do you see the Big Ten there in terms of pursuing potentially other members beyond those two?
Yeah, without being repetitive, I'll go back to the same thing. I think the absolute priority that I got through this process was the proper integration of USC and UCLA. Number one priority, we have to do that right, and there's a lot of effort underway to do that, and I'm going to spend a lot of time on that myself. The second thing I'll say is I think as commissioner of the Big Ten, my job is to make sure the conference is as strong in the future, present and future, as it's always been, and I'll just sort of leave it at that. That's the way I would look at all of that. Thank you.
I think we'll wrap it up with that. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. We're going to do a quick photo. Let's give everyone a round of applause. Commissioner Petitti.
Thank you.
We're going to do a quick photo, so if the photographers want to gather here in the front or in the back to go ahead and get Chancellor Jones, President Pines, Commissioner Petitti, and then after we get the three of you, I would love to have a shot as well with Kevin Warren and Commissioner Petitti and the group.
So there it is, the introductory press conference for the brand new commissioner of the Big Ten, Tony Petitti, whose first official day on the job is May 15th, just a couple weeks away. Plenty of questions there asked towards him, questions you would expect to happen, like what he plans on doing with USC and UCLA, as we have one more year until they join in the conference. Questions about the television deal, about possible further expansion with other schools. He brought up Caitlin Clark multiple times, the Iowa women's basketball star who has taken over the world. There is a lot on his plate, and as you can tell, he is excited to get started. The 7th commissioner in the history of the Big Ten, Tony Petitti, now in charge of the oldest conference in the country. That'll do it for us. Thanks so much for watching. Our coverage will continue throughout the weekend here on the Big Ten Network.